I don't know if Michael Barone picked up the phone to Barack Obama and said, look, I'm going on the Malzberg show. I just wrote this great piece at National Review Online, and it talks about really your pattern of appeasement, sir. Could you do something really earth-shatteringly, breathtakingly appeasing so we could talk about it in conjunction with the piece on the Malzberg show? And the president did it. He shook the hand of Raul Castro in South Africa earlier today at the memorial service for Nelson Mandela. Joining us now to talk about all of this is Michael Barone, senior political analyst at the Washington Examiner, author of his great new book, Shaping Our Nation, How Surges of Migration Transformed America and Its Politics. Hello, Michael.
Hey, good to be with you, Steve.
So how did this all go down? Did the president call you? Did you call him? Did he say, whose hand should I shake? Or
I've got this all wired with the president while he's doing his Neville Chamberlain imitation. I wrote this column about that appeared in the Washington Examiner on Monday about the Obama foreign policy, such as it is, where we're basically going away from the post-Cold War pattern that we had to a large extent with President Bill Clinton and George W. Bush of remaining friendly with our friends and gingerly embracing our former adversaries, Russia and China. And Obama seems more intent on sticking a finger in the eye of our friends and kissing up to our enemies. And he seems to be doing it particularly when he had, as he wanted to make sure Vladimir Putin knew, quote, more flexibility, unquote, in his second term.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, but before we get in, a great piece, but I just want to get your reaction. I mean, were you surprised that he shook Castro's hand? Do you think it was pre-planned? Could it have happened by accident?
Well, he had a fairly warm interchange with the late Hugo Chavez.
Yeah, big bear hug, and they exchanged. He gave him a book, the whole thing.
Who had referred to his predecessor George W. Bush as the devil, but maybe Obama didn't consider that to be an inaccurate representation, considering a lot of the rhetoric that he, unlike his several predecessors, has indulged in at the expense of the president who came before him.
Right.
I was surprised that he shook the hand of Raul Castro. I mean, these people the Castro brothers have been running an odious dictatorship now for more than 60 years. You can, as a lot of enlightened liberals will stick up their nose and say, oh, these Cuban Americans that are opposed to Castro, they're sort of vulgar. And they get enthusiastic and get carried away and start cheering. Well, and start, razzing the Castro brothers. They've really been running an odious dictatorship. And by the way, this is a dictatorship that's imprisoned poets and homosexuals for being poets and homosexuals. That's not something that I'm in favor of, even though, there's some poets in the U.S. that seem to give some of us on the right half of the political spectrum a little bit of heartburn.
Yeah, I would say we're talking to Michael Barone here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Okay, and in your piece, you also talk about the alliances that have been formed because Obama has screwed up our foreign policy so bad. That's my word, not yours. But, of course, our traditional alliances, like you said, stick a finger in the eye of our allies, embrace our murderous enemies, as he's done. And it's brought other people. It's brought Israel and Saudi Arabia together, Russia and China together. And who knows where it's going to stop?
Well, there's this hugely clumsy approach that he's had to Syria, where he said in August 2012, before he had that more flexibility in his second term, that use of chemical weapons would be a red line. Then he said in 2013, when they did use chemical weapons incontrovertibly, that, hey, it's the world's red line and it's not really a problem, and basically subcontracted his policy to Vladimir Putin. We're supposedly disarming the Syrian regime, but we have to take their declaration of where they have chemical weapons,
right.
Good faith. Well, that good faith and $4.95 will give you a cup of Starbucks.
And Michael, you start out your piece and wind it up wonderfully going back to it. And you talk about how you're reading Christopher Clark's The Sleepwalkers, how Europe went to war in 1914, all about preceding, a year or so preceding the start of World War I. And he talks about what took place and how it led up to it. And now you end by saying that sudden reversals of policy, shifting alliances, secret negotiations are reminiscent of what Christopher Clark wrote about in the lead up to World War I. And here it's happening here with Obama.
Well, that's right. Reversals of policy is on Syria, shifting alliances, where he seems to be lining up with what Walter Russell Mead calls the Central Powers. That was the term for the allies of Germany in World War I, China, Iran, and Russia, on our negotiations with them to let them keep their centrifuges contrary to the United Nations resolution, and secret negotiations. It turns out we had a secret negotiating track with the Iranians for the last 5 months. That simply wasn't disclosed.
Right, even though we were told that after the refused handshake at the United Nations, Obama picked up the phone, called the president, and then they decided to start these talks, and which led Kerry, if you remember, to say, I think we could do something in a few weeks. And people said, what the heck's he talking about? And, of course, they had all been talking for a year.
Yeah, this is something that's, if you read that Christopher Clark book, The Sleepwalkers, you have these same kind of machinations and ill-thought-out wobbliness on foreign policy and sending mixed signals and so forth in the years before World War I, and that resulted in catastrophe. And I have to say that when we have a situation like China declaring this air zone of over large parts of the East China Sea, including islands claimed by and held by Japan and South Korea, and when you've got us saying to the Iranians, well, you can keep your centrifuges, those old UN resolutions were just a superstition, I start to fear blundering into war. You contemplate World War I, and war can turn out to be a pretty terrible thing.
Yep.
None of those leaders really wanted the kind of war that happened, but the Battle of the Somme, July 1st, 1916, British casualties, 60,000 one day. That's the kind of horror that can be unleashed from unsteady statesmanship. So it's something I'm concerned about.
Michael, always great to talk to you, my friend. Thank you very much.
Steve.
Take care. Michael Barone, ladies and gentlemen. All right, when we come back, we're going to have some time to play you some sound bites, which we really haven't had time to do today because we just talked to everybody that you want us to talk to. The fascinating people, the newsmakers, the movers, the shakers. Anyway, we'll come back and we will play you some sound, and then we'll be joined after that by Ramesh Pamaru here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.